Welcome to Coach Soul, the podcast where we explore therapeutic ways to the best versions of ourselves. I'm your host, Steve Hudgins. I'm a licensed professional counselor dedicated to helping you navigate life's challenges. In each uplifting episode, we'll discuss mental health, relationships, self-care, emotional well-being, and personal growth. Join me and with my co-host, Kenya Evelyn, a therapeutic life coach, where sometimes we'll even welcome special guests to our show that share their experience and expertise. So let's embark on this transformative path together and discover a healthier and happier you. All right, welcome to Coach Soul, and Kenya is out sick today. Unfortunately, we wish her best wishes of getting well. I do have a special guest with us today, and Therese Tonning, we appreciate you being here. She is from Norway, and she is a therapist that uses EQ therapy, which is emotional intelligence therapy, something that I have not been able to find in the United States, and I'm sure this originated originally. So Therese, tell us a little bit about you. What is it that you do? And we'll just go from there.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. I'm honored to be here and talk with you. And I'm so happy that you are interested in EQ therapy, which I'm doing on a daily basis. And I've been doing that for 12 years. And my experience is that EQ therapy is a little bit different from other therapies because we are working in the emotions. And I can tell you more about this, but that was just short about me. Yeah.
And I know that you speak Norwegian is the primary language there in Norway. And so we know that the English to, Norwegian is a little difficult to translate in our mind. Sometimes I have difficulty when I try to go English to Spanish, and I'm still not that well. And so we know and understand that, but we welcome you to the show. And as a therapist myself, I've been practicing for about 12, 13 years. And, when you think about the modalities that we use in therapy, I started off in an inpatient hospital. And then I went into private practice, and that's where I'm at now. And I've learned how to do EMDR therapy, or written expressive therapy, things that we use here in the United States to help people with PTSD. And as on a previous podcast, Torrin was the 9/11 survivor who experienced a tragic PTSD event. Can you explain a little bit about what is EQ therapy? Did it originate there in Norway?
Yeah, I can tell you about when and where it originated here. It was Herdis Palsdottir and her daughter Dora that started this in 2006. They founded the EQ therapy, and 4 years later, in 2010, they started the EQ Institute. There is the place where I educated myself. I was the first group, and I was finishing 2012. So, it's quite young, in a therapy history. It's quite young, but still it's very, very growing here. Now they have branches in 3 different cities, and every year 300 students graduate from this. So it's fast growing. Yeah.
So what makes, you shared earlier that it's dealing with emotions. What is the differentiation between EMDR therapy or written expressive therapy, those type of techniques that we use here? And it seems like our trauma is more maintenance based than healing. And what I'm gathering from what we heard from Torrin say, it took like 3 sessions for her to really cure her PTSD. Can PTSD be cured through EQ?
Yeah, I really mean that because, PTSD, it means suppressed trauma. It's suppressed emotions, and it's stuck in the system, in the nervous system, in the body. So in EQ therapy, we just work in the emotions. We contact the suppressed emotions so the client can feel them. Because
Okay.
they sit closed eyes and I will guide them. So the subconsciousness will start to talk when the eyes closed. And then all these things come up and you release by feeling the suppressed emotions. I don't know if this means or makes sense to you, but it's like you contact the emotion that is suppressed to release it. Because if you just talk about it, it's only cognitive and it's not possible to release the energy, the suppressed emotions, if you just talk. Then you
Okay.
just talk. It can be, it's releasing for a short of time, but to really, really release it, you have to feel the emotions. So the
What
EQ therapy is made for that. Yeah.
So what do you think about clients who are already resistant to therapy?
Yeah.
And I know in EMDR, oftentimes when we connect the feeling and the emotion and that picture of what they come in to play with, oftentimes they go into blocking because they don't want to feel that emotion.
Yeah.
What does EQ therapy do that helps them? Because you say you close your eyes and my mind went immediately to hypnosis, but that's not what we're doing.
No. You can compare it to a kind of hypnosis because you go into the subconsciousness and the brain waves and everything will change, So you can compare, but it's not exactly the same. But it's also like when I sit with a client, I also hold the person's back. I hold them.
Oh, okay.
If they want. Because when I hold them, the body starts to produce oxytocin. And that is the hormone that is, for safety. And it helps the client to feel safe in the situation where they contact the emotions that is scary. That is, it's very normal to be afraid to feel the emotions that is suppressed because they are suppressed for a reason, because they are so scary, right? But when I hold them and I guide them, when they have the eyes closed, I will always be there and talk with them so they feel that I'm there. They're not alone in the scary emotions and memories that comes up. So I will be able to make them feel safe. So the subconsciousness will release these emotions. So, and also I can feel if the client is too scared to go somewhere. I can sense where they're going and then they shut down. But then I can help them to go slowly, not fast, right? And I have the really belief that the body will release emotions that the person is ready to receive and release.
So we know that somatic therapy here is the touch in trying to get the body to release. But EQ therapy is not like a somatic.
No. I guess it's not, but it's still, everything is connected. The body, the emotions, the subconscious, everything is connected. So somatics is the body, right? It's all the things that store in the body. And that's motions, that's energy. And I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, Steve, but I have this holistic view that everything is linked together.
Yes.
So, yeah. It's not actually about the technique used, I think.
Okay.
I think it's more about being present with the client and help them through, let them feel safe, let them feel not alone, and the body will release.
So when you think about EQ therapy, it's emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
And oftentimes we talk about how trauma can stunt that person's age. You know, sometimes if a person is 12 years old and they have a sexual abuse trauma, they tend to get stuck at that age.
Yes.
So when you're dealing with EQ therapy, does it help them to get unstuck from that age and help them to mature quicker in the intelligence? To kind of talk about that.
Yes, that's exactly what happens. Because when you have unreleased trauma, unreleased difficult memories, you know, the brain will always remember until it is released. Okay. So the brain will recognize if you are in a similar situation, then the body will have these survival mode techniques until the trauma is released, right? Okay. So in EQ therapy, we are releasing so that this disappears from the survival mode. You know, when you come into a situation later that before reminded you, it's gone. So you help yourself to grow. We always call it like when we are walking around with traumas, we are an adult child.
Yes.
When you have released the traumas from childhood, from everything, all your life, then you become a grown person, adult.
So to help our listeners, you know, when we think about, I'm holding up a fist to represent the brain, and my fingers in the front is your frontal cortex, and the back where my watch is located is what I call the fight, flight, freeze response.
Yes.
And so then as my other hand is touching my fingers, you know, that's the information we get. The body's able to process. You open up your fingers and here's your, all your, hippocampus, your pituitary, all that in the middle. But as information transforms, the middle is what says, hey, we're okay. Or we need to go to fight, flight, freeze moment. But if I take my other fist and bump it into the other, that's trauma. The cortex says system overload. This says, okay, we need to go fight, flight, freeze mode. But when trauma, it shreds that apart to separate emotion and the picture and the feeling, what the body feels, into three different parts. That's how we understand EMDR when we do an eye rapid movement to kind of pull to the front of doing that. And what is it that makes that emotional intelligence? You talk about bringing the feelings to surface.
Yes.
Is there, I know for EMDR, there is prefacing to get the history of the client and what they're dealing with. And then we go into the eye rapid movement and then reinstitute the positive reinforcement of messaging.
Yeah.
How does the EQ therapy work by pulling that feeling out? Do you reinstitute something more positive, or is it just a simple release?
Yeah, I can try to guide you through a EQ therapy shortly.
Sure.
Right? It's like if you're my client, I will ask you to close your eyes and I will hold your back. I always ask, is it okay that I hold you? Because some client doesn't want that, and that's okay.
Okay.
So, and then I will ask you to just feel your body, and emotions naturally feels like maybe a pressure or something in your stomach or in your chest, or you feel it in your limbs. It starts to be physical when you contact the emotions when you close your eyes. And then I will ask the client, what does this pressure in your chest say to you, right? And then the client just maybe say, I'm scared, or I don't want this, or whatever comes to mind to the client, right? And that is the emotion that says this. And then I understand that, okay, this person have this memory where they felt like this, right?
Okay.
And then I ask, can you see, let's say you, little Steve, having these emotions? Can you see little Steve being afraid? Can you see him, right? And then you might say, yes, I see him. And then you see something that you have experienced. You see little Steve in a situation where he is scared or whatever happens, right? And then I will ask you to go there, to go to him. And then some clients can't see it clearly, but anyway, they can imagine they're walking to themselves, right? And then when you approach little Steve, I will ask you to maybe hold him. Imagine that you hold him, or you talk to him like, I see you are scared. I want to be here for you, right? So you are taking care of little Steve in your imagination. And right there, something starts to happen. You give yourself this comfort, this security, this love. Even if it's to little Steve, it's still you, because little Steve, he is your emotions. He is your dreams, right? And then maybe when you hold him, I will ask you, what does he need now from you? And maybe you just say, he needs me to just hold him. He needs my comfort. He needs my whatever, right? And after that, I will ask you, what is the reason that he is scared? And then you know, right? You know why he is scared in that situation. So then you tell me, and maybe you say that, yeah, he was yelled at from his parents or whatever happened. And then I will ask you if you want to go to your parents with little Steve when you're holding him. And I will ask you to stand up for that little guy. I will ask you to tell your parents, little Steve is afraid now. It was not okay that you yelled at him, or, you know, whatever happened. So you kind of stand up for yourself, right? And you do it loud. You say it out loud. So in your imagination, you are seeing all these things, right? And then for our emotions and brain and everything, it doesn't differ from reality out there and the reality inside. And then maybe you have this pressure in your chest. I will ask you to take it out with your hands, and you will either give it back to the people that caused you the harm, or maybe you will bury it, or you will release it in a way as you see it in your mind. And after this, I will ask you to take care of little Steve, take him home or take him to a safe place. And you will sit down with him and tell him that I'm always here, you are safe with me, and things like that. This was just short, but I guess you have a picture of what this is, right?
So what was coming to my mind was Gestalt therapy with the empty chair technique.
Mm-hmm.
Where he sets the chair that's empty, and you imagine the person that's there that you're talking to.
Yeah.
That almost sounds kind of familiar.
Yeah.
But what makes that different is because you're closing your eyes and you're asking them to feel versus talk about that expression to the chair.
I think that Gestalt also is releasing, it's just different ways of doing that.
Okay.
The point is you have to feel the emotions. You have to feel them out. That's the whole point, really.
When you're dealing with that client that is just so scared,
yeah,
to go into that feeling, because oftentimes you look at what addiction is, they don't want to feel the emotion or self-harming by cutting or whatever. They rather feel the physical pain versus the emotional pain. So take personality disorders such as borderline personality, where oftentimes they'll do some self-harming techniques of cutting or whatever. how do you get them to be able to be okay during this session? Do you take that time to pre-prep them and then help them to slowly walk into that feeling nature?
Yes, I do. I normally have conversations the first time I meet the client, just for them to talk to me about their history, and we see some links and things, and they also get safe with me, right? It's very important to
Sure.
connect in that way. And it's also very different from client to client, how many conversations they need contra the EQ therapies. You know, it's a package and it's individual. So it's very important to listen and to acknowledge and meet the person where they are. I really believe that healing starts with that. That is the healing power, really. To listen to a person, to meet them, and to make them safe with you.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's very important. And also in the EQ therapy, if I really see the person are so afraid, I can suggest that I'm with them in their imagination, that I'm there talking to the person or standing up for them, or, you know, it's many very, very scary things people experience. So it might be too scary to go there, but then I'm with them, and that helps them to slowly get the strength to stand up for themselves in that situations. Yeah.
What would you say would be the most difficult client that you had that dealt with their trauma?
I think that's a very difficult question, really, because for every person, their traumas is the most difficult thing, you know?
Sure.
And it's as painful for them. Even for other people, it's nothing, you know? But I think that, you know, any kind of violence, emotional, physical, or both, sexual, what do you call it? Like, violence.
So oftentimes our first responders here, like police officers, having to shoot someone they didn't want to shoot. There is a YouTube video out there of a TED Talk of a highway patrolman who patrolled the Golden Gate Bridge there in San Francisco. And that's the highest suicide rate there off that bridge. And back in 2014, there was about 2,000 people who have already jumped. And then there's another YouTube that talks about a survivor off of that. And there was only like 16 survivors that have ever lived. And I can't imagine what this highway patrolman was feeling when he sees them let go of the rail and the person dies on impact, because you're going 75 miles per hour off that bridge and hitting that water like concrete. You know, when you deal with these type of responses and you think about their stories they're telling you, and they're imagining this, my question to you is, oftentimes as therapists, when we're dealing with our own clients, what do you suggest, or what do you do to prevent what we call secondary trauma? By listening to their own stories, and oftentimes we can feel connected to our clients and the emotional impact. What do you do in this situation that helps you to prevent that secondary trauma?
It's a huge question, really. I think for me, it has been essential that I have released my own traumas, right? Because if I strongly believe that if we carry traumas, everything is energy. Like I said, the
Oh, for
trauma
sure.
energy. And when I carry my own traumas, it's like a magnet. It draws other emotions, other people's emotions in, right? And when I have released my own traumas, I don't have this magnet anymore. Does it make sense for you?
Oh,
It's
for
like
sure.
it's kind of, I don't carry these emotions anymore. But I did before. Before I had released my own, I really carried other people's trauma. I've done it my whole life. And then it's like just knowing that all I can do is to be there with the person with love and care and understanding and listening to them without carrying the burden, right? I don't take responsibility for the emotions, but I take responsibility to be there. Does it make sense to you?
Right. I mean, I agree with you. I left in the military. Fortunately, I did not see any combat. I had gotten in right when the Gulf War was starting in the Middle East. And, having gotten out and moved to Oklahoma and then getting into the engineering field, sitting behind a computer doesn't help because the blue light brings out, depression and things of that nature. And you're not really talking to a lot of people. You're zoned in on that computer, and that creates that depression. But during that time frame, I decided to go back to school so that because of on my own traumas that I've been through. But I learned how to let go of my childhood hurt wounds in order for me to do therapy in an effective way, that I'm not countertransference with my clients or things like that. So when you think about the emotions that you're right, it's a magnet. We attract where we are, so to speak. And so I'm excited to talk to you about this EQ therapy. I hate to leave it on a cliffhanger because there's so many other questions that come about. And so we're going to have to do a part 2. And so to our listeners, we thank you. At this time, Therese, we'll come back to part 2. Until next time, take care and God bless.
Thank you for tuning in to today's episode on Coach Soul. As we wrap up, we want to remind our listeners of a few key points. This podcast is for informational purposes only and does not substitute professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. The content shared here is based on professional opinion but may not apply to everyone's situation. Always consult with a qualified healthcare provider before making changes to your mental health care. If you're in a crisis, please seek immediate professional help or contact a crisis hotline. Listening to this podcast does not create a therapist-client relationship. For personal advice, please consult with your licensed mental health professional in your area. Remember, your mental health journey is unique. While we hope this information is helpful, it is crucial to work directly with the qualified personnel for your specific needs. Thank you again for tuning in to Coach Soul, and we'll see you next time.